All right, let's do an eBay unboxing. I'm so excited about this. All right, I'll tell you the really funny story behind this, and let's do this in fast motion. Now, I love Russian art. Here are my actual icons. These are solid sterling silver with gold, real gold. And these are very, very old. These are hand painted. Now, I've actually, luckily, found these on eBay many years ago. Now, you won't find these on eBay anymore. The real ones, that is. You'll find ones with prints that are actually like paper prints that are lithographs, but you won't find them hand painted unless you're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, some as high as $20,000 to $50,000 if it has real jewels. And so I really was lucky. Now, I love Russian art. So when I saw these, I knew right away they were Russian. Well, I actually wasn't 100% sure, but I knew I had to have them. Now, the seller must be like really upset that he actually ended up getting only $25 for them. I made an offer. I gave him like a double offer of the opening bid of $45, and he turned it down. And I bet you he's sorry now because he lost $45. Now, these are not terribly, terribly valuable, but these are valuable in a sentimental purpose and reason. Now, I am not Russian, but I love Russian art. I think Russian art is something that we all need to save. Now, there has been many, many, many revolutions and wars during Russia's history. Russia is not a young country. Now, the language did not form until like the 1400s, the Russian language that we know today. Before that, it was Eastern Slavic Russian type of language, but it's absolutely amazing. It's been like most of these art pieces, especially the religious ones, have been through many, many, many revolutions, especially with the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks tried to destroy anything that had to do with God because they were communists. And so I'm so glad I was able to save these. Now, the seller put question marks in the description, did not know what these were. Nobody bid on them because he put them in a category that nobody would be looking for them. And I really scored these. Now, these are not through the stratosphere when it comes to value. About $175 to $500 a piece, depending on which icon you have. These are hand painted. They were painted on vitreous enamel over copper. A lot of these are pendants. You'll find these as pendants. These are antique. These are not anything that was made recently. These, I'm going to guess, were made anywhere between 1800 and 1850. We have on the back a saying. Now, I asked somebody on Reddit to help me out. They have a thing called r/translator. Now, I was looking for something to translate. Now, I tried to go on actually Google Translate, but of course with the Russian acrylic language, it's very hard to do that because I don't have it on my keyboard. So I could not decipher what the backs of these said. Now, this one does have cracking. You can see the original copper. That is okay. When you find these, a lot of them will have the vitreous enamel crackled and broken and chipped off because these were actually venerated and actually worshipped. This was probably pocket traveling icons. Really quite cool. Now, I went on our translator. Now, I didn't ever do that really before. And I typed in something about translation or something on Reddit. It took me to a transgender, an actual transgender subreddit. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And finally, I found the subreddit called r/translator. Within 3 minutes of posting these, by the way, I couldn't post my own pictures because I only had what the seller had, and they were sideways. So the seller had them in the listing like this, all blurry. You couldn't even see anything. He had the backs of them, and luckily the Russian that actually saw this after like 2-3 minutes of me posting it on Reddit actually answered me right away. He said this is and I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, I'm not Russian, Theotokos of Tikhvin, which is the really, really revered icon of Mother Mary. And this is the Venerable Isaac of Dalmatia, Russia, which he built a church in Dalmatia, and he's like a saint. But this is the protectress of Russia. So this protects the Russian people. And this is a very, very, very holy icon. It's really revered for mystical healings of sick people, especially sick children. Sorry, I had to cut the video. My dog was licking himself in his genitalia. And we heard slurping noises and I had to stop. I can't concentrate. I have concentration issues. So these are really quite old, hand painted. Let's try to get in there. Can we even see it? Probably not, because my camera does not focus, but these are really quite beautiful. Thanks to the Russian that helped me. Now, why do we have to save the Russian art and the Russian religious Orthodox art pieces? I'll tell you why. Because of the war between, can we get a focus? Okay, I don't think we'll ever get a focus with this camera, but I'm going to place these down so we can discuss this. We need to save these, boys and girls. These are artifacts, I guess you can say, religious artifacts. Now, I'm not saying Putin is a fantastic guy, but the Ukraine or the Ukrainians are actually destroying religious artifacts, Russian religious artifacts. The Ukrainians are not as into God as the Russians. The Russians are really religious, and well, most Russians are. Let's try to get a zoom and get in there tight if we can. And so actually, the media is not telling us everything we need to know. And so you might have your Facebook profile rocking with I support the Ukraine, but you really don't know what the media is not telling you. And so what the media is not telling us is that the Russian people's artifacts or religious artifacts are being destroyed by the Ukrainians. I saw a video that the actual Ukrainians stormed some kind of Russian church, and they tied up the Russian Orthodox priests. And actually, can we get a focus on this stuff? And tied them up, destroyed the whole inside of the church, destroyed all the religious artifacts, and to add insult to injury, burnt down the church. Now, they're doing this when they actually, in the middle of the war, they're fighting. They're starting to destroy all the religious artifacts, and it's a damn shame. What we also aren't being told is that a lot of the Ukrainians are Nazis. So you might be like, yeah, like whatever, save Kiev. I call it Kiev, or I'm pro-Ukrainian. It's like, look, try to find the other side of the story. Don't always listen to what the media tells you. And so, for example, the Russians are actually their stuff is being destroyed. Like, these beautiful artifacts are being destroyed every single day. But the Ukrainians, a lot of them are Nazis. And I'll tell you how I know this. Okay, I'm not an expert. I'm not a historian. But I did read a lot of Holocaust books. I used to, I was very interested in history, especially World War II. And I read a lot of Holocaust memoirs with a lot of Jews that actually survived, like Auschwitz and a lot of these concentration camps. And in every one of these memoirs that I read, a lot of the guards would be, of course, sadistic, but the most sadistic of all the guards were the Ukrainians. Now, the Germans and the Nazis got the Ukrainians to guard the camps, and what would happen was the Ukrainians would go into the concentration camp barracks. And for example, one story, by the way, trigger warning, if you don't want to hear anything really terrible, do not listen to the story, hit the back button now. In one story I was reading, a lady said that a mother had hidden her. She gave birth to a child in the barracks, and she was hiding the baby from the guards because they would kill the baby. And so the baby cried, and a Ukrainian officer, who was drunk, by the way, they usually always would show up in the barracks drunk and then become even more barbaric and more, they would torture people just for the fun of it and laugh. So the guy threw the baby up in the air, and with his bayonet caught the baby. And the mother had to see her child being murdered right before her eyes. Now, the Ukrainians were actually, they believed they were part of the master race, and they were Nazis. And so I've seen actual footage of Ukrainian soldiers now wearing the Nazi patches on their uniform. So you're like, hey, on your Facebook, your stupid Facebook little profile, you'll have like the colors of the Ukrainian flag with, hey, like, long live Ukraine. But what the media is not telling you is a lot of them are actually Nazis. Not all of them, but a lot of them are Nazis, and the Russians are actually fighting against Nazism. And so during the Bolshevik Revolution, when the commies took over, a lot of ancient artifacts of Russian Orthodox, like churches and so on and so forth, were actually destroyed. The churches were dismantled. The pieces of religious artifacts were burned and destroyed. If you were caught holding, say, these two icons in your possession, you would be murdered or sent to the gulag. And so we need to save these precious artifacts. And so we have right here Isaac of Dalmatia, and we have the Blessed Mother of Tifvin, or the Theotokos of Tifvin. And this is actually said to have been painted by St. Luke the Evangelist don't know the history, but during World War II, the original one went missing. The Nazis, yes, the Nazis again, they actually stole the real one from the church in Russia. And I read some story about somebody after World War II in the late 40s went into a German antique shop and found what appeared to be the original. Don't know how true that is, but it went back to America and to save it from the communists getting their hands on it, because the communists wanted to destroy anything that was the word of God. And to this day that we live today, they're trying to destroy anything of the word of God, because if you don't put your leaders ahead of God, you're going to be killed. And this is why we got to be very careful of communism. And we do know the Russians were a communist country, but it was only because of the Bolsheviks. Before that, these are, by the way, I believe these are the last Tsars, pieces made during the last Tsars of Russia, like the Romanov family. But this is most likely before the last Tsar of Russia, who was killed by the Bolsheviks, I believe in 1917, not 100% sure, but the Romanov dynasty ended right then and there. I believe this to be before Tsar Nicholas's father, during his reign. I think these were made. Possibly even before that. I was told this is a very ancient, my husband has a friend that's Russian who's a translator for the NYPD. And he said that these are actually, he's Jewish though, by the way. And so he said this is ancient language. This is before Russian language. He said this is from the 14th century. Don't know if these are probably actually that old. But I found a lot of these are called finfits, by the way. Finfits. And I found a lot of these being sold mostly in some kind of Russian antique online store. So it's very hard to find these. And I got really lucky finding these. So I'm going to show you a couple of other examples before we go of ones that you will find. They're not incredibly valuable, but valuable enough to save. And I believe that we should save all of these pieces from what's going on right now with the war between Russia and the Ukraine, because all this stuff is going to be smashed and destroyed soon. So I'm recording my computer screen, which is not that good, but apparently this is what the original one must have looked like. It was actually encrusted in gold, really quite beautiful. So this website, therussianstore.com, it's actually in Boston, and you'll find a lot of beautiful religious artifacts, including Holy Catholic relics and icons and different collections. Now apparently this is St. Isaac of Dalmatia, and this is a finfit. And you can see the word finfit right here. And this is a pendant, actually, St. Isaac of Dalmatia. And I'm trying to zoom out just a hair. Okay, so we can see this. And apparently it says it's a double-sided, and I'll show you. This one's sold. There's no price, unfortunately. So it says sold. But on the back, some of these are usually cracked. Here's other ones you will find in your searching on possibly eBay, but you're not going to really find a bargain. And again, some of the prices, $575, $550, $675, $475. And these are tiny. These are about 1.5 inches, maybe tops, 1 inch by 1.5 inches. Mine is actually larger. Some of these would have been worn as pendants around the neck. Some of these would be devotional pieces to carry in your pocket. Really quite lovely. And a lot of these do have cracking on it, like mine. Mine is cracked. Look, you can see the cracks here. A lot of times this vitreous porcelain just completely cracks. And the back of this, it just broke off. There was enamel on the back of this one. And here's another finfit porcelain icon pendant, although mine's not a pendant, but it has cracks going throughout it. But if you look at the back, this one has damage. And so here we go. And you can see the copper through it. And so this is not a problem when you see these damaged like this. So whether you like the Russians or not, if you collect antiques and you collect religious artifacts, please try to save as many of these Russian pieces as you can. Because pretty soon, by the way, this has lovely, lovely cloisonné, or actually champlavé. Look at the enamel work going around this. The Russians are known for this beautiful enamel work. This one is gold with sterling silver. And this one is also sterling silver, just dirty. I have to clean it. But look at this. You're not going to find this pretty soon. This is all going to be destroyed. And so please, save as many of these Russian icons or Russian holy pieces as you can before they're gone and will not have anything to actually look at and enjoy, because the Russians are actually, all their stuff is being smashed. And so we need to smuggle as much of this stuff out of Russia as quickly as possible before something really bad happens. So once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys all soon. I'm so glad the seller did not know what these were. I really didn't know what they were either, but I knew that they had to be something Russian, most likely. By the way, look at that hand painting. That was all done by hand. And you don't see work like this anymore. Everything is actually mass produced, made in China. But we got to save the beautiful religious artifacts of the Russian church. And whether you do not like the Russians and you're pro-Ukrainian, remember about what I told you. A lot of them are Nazis. So if you're thinking that you're doing the virtue signaling thing by saying, hey, I support Ukraine, when Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, ends up buying, which he just bought, I just read about it the other day. We're giving them billions of dollars. He just bought a $15 million house in London. So your tax dollars are going to actually fund, somebody who you might say, oh, Viva, Ukraine, but this guy's living in a $15 million house in London and you're not. And so think about it. Think about, try to look between the lines of what the media tells us and the information we're really getting that we're really not getting.